The first sort of tool I just want to make sure that people are aware of is a couple of these live on the website, and the one thing I want to kind of prompt is that if you see something that's missing in any of these sort of pages, and you want to contribute, if you want to do a how-to manual for the advocacy guide, or if you see something missing on the civic engagement page or the model legislation page, let us know, and we will work to get that up there on these pages. And so the first tool I really want to talk to people about is the advocacy guides, and a lot of these live at recoveryvoices.com. You will get the links to these, and you'll have it in Google Classroom, so you'll always have these links. And so we are working on 3 new ones right now, but the ones that are up here right now really help grassroots advocates. You're gonna run into people, when you're talking about Recovery Advocacy Project, that somebody's gonna wanna testify for a piece of legislation, or they're going to have interest in a town hall meeting, or they're going to want to host a little advocacy meeting in their community, maybe twice a week, just in their community. And so how do they do that? And so as state team organizing team members, we can help people, we can guide people towards some of these resources that are out there. And so some of the ones that live on the website right now are building your advocacy base, hosting a monthly advocacy meeting, a resource map. There's 2 versions of town hall meetings. There's one in person and one virtually. I know that a lot of the advocates have used these 2 here, effectively speaking out as a recovery advocate. That really dives into all the language training that we've done around language training for advocates that helps family members, people in recovery, and allies speak out effectively so that they're not adding to that stigma or adding to that negative public perception. All of those tools live there, and a lot of people review that before they go testify, for example. I know 2 people in West Virginia went to go testify today on legislation. And so having tools like giving effective testimony on here, where you can jump in and and start looking at some of these tools, and it'll go through one by one, step by step, of how to provide public testimony in any of these advocacy guides. It'll kind of give you some outlines and some tips, and then you can click on best practices, and those best practices come from advocates that have done this already, and somebody that's provided testimony, and they kind of talk about some of the tips to it. And so that's available for everyone. I'm collaborating with an advocate in Tennessee right now on 3 more how-to guides. One is how to do a press release or a media advisory. There's going to be another one on how to do a letter to the editor, and then a 3rd one for grant writing. And so if you are interested in collaborating on a how-to manual, just reach out to us. You can email myself or Garrett. And the way that we're working on one now with the advocate from Tennessee is just, and we have a Google Doc going, and we're just sharing ideas back and forth. And so I know somebody on one of the teams the other day said that, I'd like to become familiar with how a bill becomes a law. I just don't know how that works. And so we have that here for people. And you'll get those questions from people as you're talking about what Recovery Advocacy Project is and what your state team is. And so that's the first piece I wanted to show everybody. The next piece is on the model legislation page. And the model legislation page is brand new. Sorry, it's a little slow because we're on the Zoom. There we are. The model legislation page, it's not just legislation. It has local initiatives, It has ballot initiatives that people have voted on during election years as voters. There are local ordinances. There are executive orders and for mayors and governors. And so all of this is local. And I've met a lot of you this week that we talked about how, you know, some people are really into policy. They love the legislative sort of piece to this. And other people are curious about it, and they don't know where to start. And this is an excellent place for you to start. And I know that one of the things that we're asking people to do between meetings 1 and 2 is really kind of figure out, you know, explore what kind of role and responsibility and asset you want to be to the team. And maybe that is a policy researcher. Maybe that is social media. And so we have some of these tools for you to kind of dive into. And so if you say, hey, I'd love to do some legislative stuff or policy stuff, spend some time here, because what we did was we tried to think of almost every issue impacting people in recovery, and tried to find a state law or local policy that addressed that has passed somewhere, or there's been action on it somewhere. And so you can come here and click on Good Samaritan overdose laws, and you know, and we highlighted Missouri's law and Massachusetts law here. And then there's other resources too, you know, just in terms of Good Samaritan. And there's a website for people who use drugs, that they encourage people, and a phone line for people who use drugs, that if people are using drugs, they can use safely while they're on the phone with somebody. And so it has some other resources here that you can kind of dive into. There's some on peer recovery support services. And you know, we highlighted a few here. There's some model legislation that was put out by the Legislative Analysis and Public Policy Association. And then Maine passed a law that expanded peer support in recovery community centers all over the state. So we highlighted that here. And then California passed a law specifically to increase access to peer support for individuals with lower incomes. And so there are, you know, if you just look on the left side of the screen, there's a lot of different topics here. Even if you jump into syringe service programs, I asked people that have been doing harm reduction for a long time, what are some of the stronger ones across the country? North Carolina, and then there's different ways that states have done it, right? Some changed their public health laws, others revised their state statute around drug paraphernalia, so we gave examples of that. We have talking points and fact sheets that Florida used. And so sometimes if you come here, there are, you're gonna see some talking points and stuff beyond legislation. And then here's an example of Maine signing an executive order that expanded syringe service programs during COVID-19 as an emergency. And so there is a ton of stuff here, whether it's racial equity and justice, opioid stewardship bills, recovery housing, employment bills, LGBTQAI+. And so if you can add to this and you have some ideas and stuff that you worked on, please contact me and we'll be able to add it here. So that's the model legislation page. We're going to jump into our civic engagement campaigns. We built a voter resource hub called Vote Recovery, and this is also off of recoveryvoices.com/vote. And you've heard, if you've been in an organizing team meeting with Garrett, he's told this story a couple times just about how, you know, they're trying to community organize in their community and nobody was paying attention to them. And so they went out and registered voters, hundreds of people in recovery, and all of a sudden people started listening. And so I've definitely been to a lot of listening sessions and state teams where people say, you know, it doesn't seem like we're heard by our single state agency, or you know, people don't take our community seriously. Our voice isn't loud enough. We're not as visible as we'd like. well, maybe registering a lot of people to vote between now and, forever, will help you all in terms of raising the profile of the issues that you all are talking about. And so, one of the things that we did last year, and this has a lot of tools on it. We asked people to start thinking about recovery as a single voter issue, the same way that people are empowered to vote based on the environment, or guns, or reproductive rights, and so if you think about recovery and all of the different issues that uh, all the ways that people are impacted by addiction. Um, One of the things that I did during election season was I just looked up all of my candidates and I contacted them and I said, this is what you have to do to earn my vote. And I told them what I cared about. And, I didn't care about political party, if they were Democrat or Republican, I cared about their responses. And, if you think about if everybody kind of does that, whether it's LGBTQ AI issues, or it's criminal justice reform issues. If we're communicating with those running for office and educating them on what's important to us, there's a lot of power in that. And so people can come here, and it has some data from polling for registered voters. It encourages people to dive into issues. I just want to show you this real quick. We have a recovery issue education page on the Vote Recovery website. And the idea of this is, if you want to research a certain topic before you talk to candidates, you can come here and this kind of gets you started. You can dive deeper, but this will kind of get you started if you want to dive into homelessness issues, if you want to dive into racial equity or family support, or ending the drug war, or overdose awareness, Medicaid expansion, or access to healthcare. All of these issues are there where you can just kind of get started on that process. The voters can get started. And so this doesn't have to be around election day either. This can be throughout the whole year, by the way. And then we have some tools here just on the website for people. As long as online registration for voting is allowed in your state, people can come here and register online to vote right off the website. If you don't know if you're registered to vote or you moved, you can check your voter status. If you want to learn about absentee or early voting, if you want to find your polling location, you can do that here. You can look at registration deadlines. We have a vote recovery pledge that people can take. And then there's a lot more stuff up here too, just if you want to look at voter restoration rights, or if you're turned away at the polls, how do you report voter violations? And so that when we talk about nonpartisan civic engagement, we're talking about having it be issue related in terms of recovery and not political party related. And the reason why we do that is because we've done a lot of polling of registered voters and asked people, hey, would you consider voting for somebody of the opposite political party that you belong to if they had a more attractive stance on recovery? And 42% said yes, 36% said maybe, and maybe only 20% said no. And so a lot of people would consider consider voting for a candidate just based on their answers on mental health or brain health or recovery issues, the issues that you care about. All right, and so we just wanted to put that out there for everybody. And then the last thing I want to show people off the website for people that enjoy like the social media sort of piece to this. I'm not really too much of a social media person, but if you all have Twitter, somebody on our Mississippi call the other day said, they tag their elected officials on Twitter all the time, and that's really smart. And so if you go to recoveryvoices.com in the take action section, you're going to see some actions that you can take, but also the piece that's right underneath it over here. Sorry, I scroll down a little bit. There's a social toolkit, and there's a lot of stuff here. So if you feel like you're going to want to volunteer to help your state organizing team with their social media sort of stuff, there's a lot here that'll help you. There's example tweets and posts you can use for social media. There's sample emails that you can send people. There's an entire graphics session, posters. So let's just go to the graphics section real quick. You can steal any of these images and put them online. You can talk about why you advocate. So there's an I advocate for collection you can find. There's a stand up for recovery section, and this section over here that is called the states collection. So each state has their own graphics, and so when you do actions, and I'll explain some of those actions in a couple minutes, what I mean by that, you can partner that with some graphics for your state. And so you just come here and go to the states collection. I would recommend everybody just go to this and just download the graphic of your state on your computer so you can have it for future actions. Let's just take a look. I'll show you. Let's just go to Hawaii, because why not? And so Hawaii has an action, has a photo there, and all of these are of something in your state. Obviously, like if it's Washington D.C., I think it has a picture of the Washington Monument, and so that's a really good tool for people. Let me go back. And so all this sort of stuff, whether you use Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, there are example graphics here that you can use. There's email blasts, you can use samples. There's a lot of posters and flyers that if you just want to put I advocate for flyers all over the place, go for it, download them. And put them up at recovery community centers, put them up at collegiate recovery programs or recovery high schools, recovery houses. Let me go to the next tool here. What we get asked a lot is how you get people involved. And so I keep referring to Action Network. And so what that is a digital organizing platform. I'm not going to show you how to do it tonight, but we're going to train people on it. And so each state has a Action Network, which means that you can create petitions specific to your state. You can create letter writing campaigns specific to your legislator. You can create events that are happening in your event registration page that are happening in your state. And so a lot of people just want to know how to get people involved. And so there's an organizing team, that's you all are part of on the organizing teams. And then there's the grassroots advocates. Well, how do we get them involved? Well, we have a link just called Join the Movement. And this is a link you can send to anybody. And as long as they put their zip code here, it'll automatically add them to the correct state action network. And so my zip code is 29579 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And so I would get added to the South Carolina Action Network. And these networks are yours. They're yours to build and to engage people in with. And then we ask people to let us know, hey, are you a person in recovery? Are you a family member? Are you a supporter of recovery? And then we ask them some basic questions like what they're interested in. And so if I said, I'm interested in harm reduction, I'm a person in recovery, here's my zip code, and I would click join the community. And so anytime the South Carolina team wanted to do an action around harm reduction, they could email everybody in South Carolina that said, I care about harm reduction. And so it's a very smart way of organizing, because I, as an advocate, as a grassroots advocate, I've already told my state team this is what I care about, you know? And so, so this is one of, and so everybody will get this link in the follow-up emails, and you'll see it in the PDF that we send in the follow-up email, and you will see it in your Google Classroom as well. We're still adding people. I love that people are still jumping in. And so that join the movement is very, and so you can send that to people in your state, and you can send it to people out of state. If you live in Rhode Island and know somebody in California that you think would be into community organizing on a local level in terms of recovery issues, send them this link, let them know what it's about, and then they'll be contacted by their state team. I wanted to give an example of a petition. And so any state can create petitions, and so this is one in Virginia that an advocate did around overdose victims being supported after they go to the hospital when they're getting discharged from medical care. And one of our advocates, she lost her husband on, I think it's September 11th of 2018, and to an overdose, and she helped get this law passed called Danny's Law in Virginia, and so it passed last year, but it's really, you know, the teeth behind it and having it be enforced is the problem that they're running into. And so they're working to strengthen Danny's Law. And so she started a petition to strengthen the law that she passed last year. And so, you know, she created a graphic for the petition. Yeah, as you can see on the right, there was 170 people that signed this petition, and that was just through a couple shares over social media. And so this is a way that people can support an issue specifically. And so this petition doesn't, there's two ways you can do petitions. You can do broad support-based petitions on issues like this. And so that way, you know, if there's ever a vote on Danny's Law, for example, they can contact all the people that already signed this petition and said they care about it. And so that way, it's a smarter way of organizing. And she talks a little bit about what Danny's Law is on the petition, and we made a video of her telling her story and why it's important for people to sign the petition. And then she asked people to sign the petition. And down here is the actual petition that if you targeted the other way to do a petition is you can target it to a specific elected official, you know, or you can target it to a chief of police. And so like they would get the petitions at the petition names as it was being signed. And so you can do it directly and targeted in that way, or you can do broad-based petitions like this. And so and all people do is you just share this link on social media for the petition, and other people sign it and they pass it on. And it's the same way that you would see I'm blanking on it now, but there's a group that does petitions for progressive sort of causes. I forget the name of them. Anyway, and so that's one of the things that we can do in Action Network. And so one of the last things, I have two more things to show people. So we can create petitions for your state and for your community. And then we can also generate letter writing campaigns. And so this is a really simple one that we actually created. So anybody in any state could use. It's just an introduction to people's elected officials. And so it just taught you, you can write to your elected official and let them know you're a community organizer with Recovery Advocacy Project, and it tells a little bit about what Recovery Advocacy Project is. Again, you can do letter writing campaigns on anything. So if you're we're going to do some listening sessions in the next month or so in your states, and we're going to hear from community members, people in recovery and people that are impacted from addiction. And they're going to say, hey, I wish there was a letter writing campaign on this, or there's this issue. Well, there's a bill at the State House. So that addresses that issue. That is a solution for that issue. And so let's do a letter writing campaign to elected officials. And so, and as soon as people put their zip code in again, it will, and you hit start writing your letter, and it'll give you space to edit the letter and write your own letter, but it'll give you some talking points too, to help you. But we want to encourage people to write their own letters and add to the letters. But what Action Network does for everybody is it automatically addresses it to that person's elected official. And so if I were to put my information here, then and hit start writing, it would bring up my state representatives if that was the target. I hope that makes sense. And so that's just a real simple example of a letter writing campaign. And by doing that, you are raising the profile of a specific issue. The last thing I want to show you all on, and so that's it for that part. I'm going to put something in the chat. Just give me a second here. And sorry, I had to turn the chat off for this one because we had to put some links in the chat. If you are interested in being the point person or point persons in your team, and you're kind of tech savvy and you like, computers and stuff like that, and you're interested in joining, and you're interested in doing that sort of role and learning about Action Network, Garrett and I will teach you all these tools for petitions, and we'll teach you for letter writing campaigns and how to do events. And so if you are interested in doing that, hold on one second. I'm going to put this in the chat box. Even if you told Garrett and I that you would do this already, like if you signed up for it already, just please fill this out anyway, because this will help us be able to email everybody that's interested all at once. And so if you want to be the person, even if you're just kind of curious, if you think you might be able to do it, or you want to challenge yourself, then please fill out that Google form that we just put in the chat box. And that will help us to find the people that are curious about doing Action Network, because last year we tried to train everybody to do it and it just didn't work. We found that for people that love the kind of like tech savvy stuff, we will teach you this. All right. Let me see here. And then that's about all I have for today, except for the last thing I wanted to show you. We've had some questions about Google Classroom. And so the important thing about Google Classroom for people to understand, so you're going to be invited every month to a different classroom, and you're going to kind of collect classrooms along the way. And so the way that you access Google Classroom is you go to your Gmail account, and then there's this little piece over here that says Google Apps on the top right of your screen. You would click on Google Apps, just kind of scroll down, and you'll see Google Classroom somewhere in your Google Apps, and you would click on that. And every single Google app that you have accepted is going to show up here and populate here. So everybody should have gotten an invitation for the orientation one on the right and the wrap getting started one. And we're building a couple other ones, but so you don't have to pay attention to that right now. And so when you go into each Google Classroom, there's going to be a little piece that says classwork right in the middle. And all of the tools and your materials will live there. Sorry, it's taking a little while to load up, but if you want to review how to do a listening session, you would come and click on community listening sessions. It'll tell you what community listening sessions are, and then there'll be a bunch of supporting materials for each class. Sometimes the materials are videos, and so it's like a little video training. For this one, I made a little 5 to 7 minute video. And then there's some one-pagers. We just used these tools to do a listening session in Virginia last week, and sorry, that was earlier this week, and Washington, D.C. last week. And so all of this stuff will live here, and you can leave comments in the classroom in this stream right here. And so I see a lot of people that introduce themselves in the classroom. That's wonderful. I appreciate that. You can all talk to one another. And so that's the last sort of piece I just wanted to share.